I'm Danny, that witch next door, and you're listening to That Witch Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode here at That Witch Podcast. I'm Danny. I'm that witch next door. I'm going to be your host, your guide, your mentor, and instructor in all things magic, witchcraft, astrology, and witchy business. And this is a good one today, everybody. This episode really can benefit a lot of people. Why? Because tarot, oracle cards, cartomancy in general, it's for everyone, my friend. And it is something that I am really deeply connected to. I'm really rooted in it. And it's something that I have been teaching about for the longest in my spiritual career. This is a subject or a branch of subjects, I guess, that I have been talking about and teaching for a long time now, and it was probably the first thing I started really consciously teaching about, like I said, in my spiritual profession. So let's do this. What is tarot? What is cartomancy? What are oracle cards? What are the difference? How can you use them? Why is it so damn intimidating? And is it even really that hard? No, it's not. And it doesn't even need to be intimidating. So that's really my purpose and my intention for today's episode. I want to take the nervousness, the hesitancy, the intimidation out of working with tarot and oracle cards. So first and foremost, let's start by defining a couple of terms here so we can start drawing some lines. Cartomancy, according to the internet, is, this is kind of a combination of a few different definitions that I read, and here's my jumbled understanding for you. Well, not jumbled, combined understanding for you. Cartomancy itself is the interpretation of archetypal symbols in relation to a specific intention, person, or situation for further insight and guidance. More specifically, this is spiritual insight or guidance, or intuitive insight or guidance, okay? There's definitely some type of, what do I want to call that? You're reaching out and asking something beyond you, okay? This could be, this is really a huge umbrella for a reason. And that's why tarot cartomancy is for everyone. All you're doing is interpreting archetypal symbols. What is an archetype, you might ask? Because if you're like me, I've heard this term over and over again. I had heard it since I was very young, but I kind of had an understanding of an archetype. I could probably name some archetypes. But again, for our intents and purposes, let's cast a little definition here to help further our understanding. So according to, this was the International University of Florida, I think. Florida International University, there it goes, which I'll link for everybody in the show notes. According to Florida International University, archetypes are universally understood symbols or terms or patterns of behavior. And honestly, that was a snippet, like a tip of the iceberg of this article and this definition. And again, that's why I linked it for you if you want to kind of dive more into what archetypes are, because it is a whole ass branch and subject of conversation that is really, really fascinating. But for our purposes today, archetypes are these different universally understood symbols and images in tarot cards. And honestly, astrology, the practice and study of astrology and the zodiac signs and the planets and understanding their traits and tracking their patterns of behavior. Yep, you're right. It sounds familiar because astrology is another form of archetypal work or practice. So, like I said, if you think that archetypes are fascinating and just the concept of that in general, I linked that article for you, and it's kind of a fun rabbit hole to fall down. I had to stop myself, so I actually recorded for this episode because I was getting a little sucked down the rabbit hole myself. So for what you need to know, these cards, when people ask you like, why is tarot accurate or what exactly is it? It's really just the interpretation of universally understood symbolism in relation to, this is where we bring in the cartomancy definition, in relation to a specific intention, person, or situation for further insight or guidance. That's all that you're doing, okay? It's really easy. You're not, I don't know if you had some of the background that I had, but you're not doing anything evil. You're not contacting anything. You're not asking you're not having to sell your soul in order to get these answers kind of a thing. When you are reading tarot, many things can happen. Sometimes you can really download and channel information, and you'll notice in a reading that you're much more of a channel. And in other situations, it will really feel like writing a book report. Taking a piece of symbolism and breaking it down into pieces to interpret it and further understand it and gain further insight from it. That's really essentially what you're doing. But a little twist, a little spin, you're giving a specific intention or a specific situation or having a specific person in mind when you are interpreting these symbols and shapes and colors, if you will. Okay. So this is where we get answers to questions. It's because we're posing a question in the first place. We're not just interpreting these symbols for fun. I mean, there are people that study tarot cards and do that. But typically the practice of using tarot and the purpose of those cards is to ask a specific question, to pose your intention, and the interpretation of your symbols will offer the answer and the insight that you seek. When it comes to, I have to touch on this, when it comes to why do they work? Listen, I don't know, okay? I have no idea. I don't know why. That's like asking why we exist. I would love to have that answer for you. But I think that we are meant to have sacred and divine mysteries. I think that we're supposed to have things in our universe and in our experience that we don't fully and completely understand, and that's the whole entire point of it. And a lot of spiritual work is just that. And cartomancy, any kind of divination is going to fall under that. It's working within the ether. It's working within the esoteric. It's working within the arcana, okay? Divine mysteries and secrets. So I don't know. No, to answer, if you want to know my personal opinion, no, I do not think it's random. I think you will always get the right card. I think that I really do firmly believe that. I don't think it's possible to quote unquote get the wrong card. I do think it's possible for your deck to kind of act up and show you signs that it needs a break and it needs a rest and it needs some time of disconnect. But again, I think you got those cards for a reason so that the deck could communicate that to you. So no, I don't think it's possible to get the wrong cards. So that right off the bat, I hope we bust that myth right out the gate. No, you're not going to pull the wrong cards. You don't have to worry about that. Myth or fear number 2, am I going to interpret it wrong? honestly, again, when it comes to exploring divine mysteries and seeking insight from something beyond ourselves or something deeper within ourselves even, right? I believe that we are revealed the information that is meant for us at any given moment. So if it makes you feel any better, even seasoned and experienced tarot readers like myself and people that have been practicing triple or more the amount of time I have, I think that they also experience times of blockage. I think they also experience times of self-doubt and self-hesitancy. Am I interpreting this message right? Am I being biased? I think that's just part of the journey. I don't think it's like user error, something's wrong with you and you shouldn't read tarot. I think it's part of the tarot, and that's just part of spiritual practice, in my opinion. I think that we all experience blockages of all kinds all the time. And it's part of the experience is learning how to hold space for yourself and work through and break through those blockages. So I hope you know right off the bat, number one, you're not going to pull the wrong card. And number two, you're not going to interpret it wrong. Okay. So there, you don't have to be scared. Next, I want to talk a little bit about what tarot is, what oracle cards are, and I want to give you a super quick little history lesson behind tarot, specifically the Rider Waite Smith tarot deck. So, tarot, according to Merriam-Webster, is a pack of playing cards used for fortune telling. It's not the most muggle definition you've ever heard. I was like, geez. You're not directly insulting, but it feels like there's a little bit of a backhand in that definition. Tarot is, yes, a deck of playing cards. You can use them to play actual games, and you can use them for cartomancy. So if that helps you understand the terms, tarot is not cartomancy, and cartomancy is not tarot necessarily. Tarot refers to a specific type of deck. Cartomancy, an easier definition of that would be reading tarot, reading cards. That would be a more simplified definition. But tarot itself is not a verb. It's a noun. It refers to a deck of playing cards, okay? And the most popular modern tarot deck is definitely the Rider Waite Smith deck. This deck was created in 1909. A lot of people are shocked to hear that, and they think it's way older than that. You're probably thinking of the Tarot de Marseille. And Pamela Colman Smith, who is the artist of the Rider Waite Smith deck, she definitely, there is some, well, her and Arthur Edward Waite were both inspired somewhat by historical different tarot decks, including the Tarot de Marseille. But this is actually a very, very young deck, historically speaking. This is just over 100 years old. I think that a lot of people think the Rider Waite Smith deck is like the original. And it's definitely been marketed many ways. I saw it in my research, most commonly referred to as like the world's most popular tarot deck. And I don't know if that's a statistically accurate phrase or if that's more of a marketing phrase that has been used frequently, but is not the original by any means, okay? Tarot does date back to 13th, 15th century, somewhere around there. Sorry, should have wrote that one down. And there are a few other decks, including Tarot de Marseille, the Egyptian deck. You can definitely fall down that rabbit hole a little bit. We're going to stick on Rider Waite Smith for time's sake. And because, again, this is definitely in modern use, the most popular deck. I would agree with that. I don't know about the world's, but I know that in modern spiritual community, definitely the most popular. I want you to know that when you look into the Rider Waite Smith deck, you'll notice it's called the Rider Waite deck a lot. And it's had this resurgence of being called the Rider Waite Smith deck because Arthur Edward Waite, the creator and the author, he commissioned Pamela Coleman Smith to be the artist. He paid her a flat fee for her work. And not only did she not financially benefit from the deck at all, her name she wasn't even credited for it. She was credited as the artist, but her name wasn't used. It was called the Rider Waite. Rider was just the publishing company. They were who put it on cards and distributed it, but it should have very, very much been called, at the least, the Waite Smith deck, if not the Smith Waite deck, because the art is everything. The creator behind it and the author behind it, that matters definitely. But she is the person who actually created the physical images that we're looking at. So at the very least, at the very, very least, she should have been credited equally 50-50. So that's why you'll see we really, in the spiritual community, in the tarot community more specifically, there's been this resurgence of even calling it the Smith deck, just to really kind of start giving her credit where credit was definitely due. So you'll see the Rider Waite Smith deck. If you look this deck up, you have probably seen those images many, many times. It's a very, very popular deck. You've probably even seen those images in Hollywood or media. But in addition to the original Rider Waite Smith deck, as the most popular modern deck, it has been interpreted and then produced by countless of other tarot artists. And so you can find, or you will find, that most tarot decks that you purchase, most modern published tarot decks that you purchase, are directly based off of the Rider Waite Smith deck. And the suits, a lot of the symbolism and direct imagery will be inspired by and used with the kind of spin-off decks. Spin-off isn't the right word. Inspired by decks, I guess. And the meanings. If you start kind of collecting or learning about other tarot decks inspired by the Rider Waite Smith deck, you'll find that most artists stick pretty traditionally with Arthur Edward Waite's interpretation of each of the cards. But again, this is also because we're working with archetypes in general, and archetypes were not born of Arthur Edward Waite. These are universally understood symbols that have existed throughout human history, across many, many cultures, across multiple localities, right? So it also makes sense in general why, even a deck inspired by the original Rider Waite Smith deck is going to have connections and similar interpretations of these symbols, because they're universally understood. So I like paying tribute where tribute is due with this Rider Waite Smith deck, because in its history, because even if you don't use that exact deck, even if you're using I could name a million off the top of my head, and of course I can't think of a single one right now. But if you're using a deck that has, the suit of pentacles, the suit of swords, the suit of wands, and the suit of cups plus a major arcana, that is based off of the Rider Waite Smith deck, even if you didn't purchase exactly that. So I personally believe, because it's inspired by that, a good tarot reader should have a solid, or at least base understanding of the Rider Waite Smith deck, the history behind it, Pamela Coleman Smith and Arthur Edward Waite's intentions with those cards, since your cards are also connected directly to them. Okay, so that's why I really encourage you to at least look up the original imagery if you're using a deck inspired by or from the Rider Waite Smith deck in your tarot practice, if you don't have a Rider Waite Smith deck yourself, I do encourage that you at least look up the image associated with it, because it can offer even more insight. And therefore, you really retain and understand the energy and information that that card holds, instead of feeling like it's this memorization game. And this brings me to some of our next, I guess, segment of tips here. So when it comes to tarot, another big fear or myth is that it's this memorization game that you have to memorize. So many clients and so many students of mine even use that term. I'm trying not to use my book more and more, so I memorize the cards. And I see the purpose of using that word. I totally understand. You're not doing anything wrong. But I also want to help you remove that label and remove that connotation and remove that pressure, honestly, from yourself to memorize anything. And instead, I want you to try and just understand the symbols, understand the imagery, and therefore understand the card's energy itself. This is where that real gut and intuitive interpretation and those spot on readings come from, is from understanding the symbols of the card. And that's why I always start by talking about archetypes, because you can't skip over universal symbols and really successfully understand tarot imagery. If you turn it into a memorization game, that really, you're gonna have a surface level connection with the cards. If you turn it into a memorization game. So that's why I really, really recommend, before you look up the definition of the card in the little booklet that it came with, you sit with the imagery that the card is presenting you with first. This, I find, is probably the biggest, where all the problems happen. This is the most common area where we start having hiccups. We start having imposter syndrome. We start having self-doubt. And I find that a lot of people really unintentionally end up just leveling out and plateauing their tarot practice because they limit themselves to that book that it comes with, or a tarot book in general, or a website, or an app. I challenge you. I'm not saying throw away the book. I'm not saying throw away the app. And I'm not saying don't look in the booklet. All I'm saying is add this extra layer. Have yourself sit with the imagery of the card first, whether it's the Rider Waite Smith card or not. If it's a different deck that you're using, sit with it. What is the imagery? What are the colors that are being used? Ask yourself, what feelings does this evoke in me? Notice your body. Do you notice that you felt any tension anywhere? Did you have a drop in your stomach? Did your heart skip a beat? Did your cheeks flush a little red? Like, what were some of those cues? And then go further. What were some of the emotions? Go further into your intellectual space. What were the thoughts that immediately come to you? And you looked at some of the imagery, some of the colors, some of the symbols of this card. And if this deck is not a Rider Waite Smith deck, I definitely recommend pulling up, like I said, a comparison and looking at the original symbol or original card image, which is very easy because you just Google it and go to Google Images and there will be a million pictures of it right there. And then go further. What symbols did the artist in my deck take from the Rider Waite Smith deck? What are the similarities and what are the differences? You'll often find that what the artist did was take the original imagery and energy of the Rider Waite Smith card and amplify it in their own unique way and interpretation. Again, this is why it's so helpful to be able to go back to the roots of that Rider Waite Smith card. Okay. So I really do recommend that. My next tip for you is to have somewhere where you do tarot reflection. This can be in a few forms. A good old-fashioned journal and notebook. Okay. You can just talk about the question that you asked, the card that you pulled, the imagery on there, what the book said about it, what you thought about the card, all of that. That could also be you recording yourself. So you could record an audio reading of yourself or a video reading for yourself, okay? Doing this whole entire practice and verbally processing and interpreting the cards. This could also be in group or social or community format. So if you have access to a social group, which is really easy. Number one, if you're in that witch school, you're always welcome to come in. We have a tarot support topic in our Mighty Networks, and you can go on there and post your reading and kind of hammer out your thoughts and ask for additional insights there. But there's also lots and lots and lots. I am not the only person hosting spiritual community groups. There are all kinds that you can find them through Instagram that are hosted on Instagram, hosted on Facebook, hosted on Discord, hosted on Mighty Networks like we are. You can definitely get on some of those apps that you're on scrolling around every day anyways, and check that out. You can also take a look at what other educational tarot content people are putting out. Okay, so follow other tarot readers and listen to the ways that they interpret their cards. Talk with people in the comments. Okay, all of this is just a different and alternative way of kind of documenting and processing through your tarot practice. The reason why I'm recommending this is because what I find time and time and time again in tarot, and the most common reason why you pick it up and then you feel disconnected from it and you leave it to collect dust for months, if not years, on a shelf, is because there is no integration. You're not actually integrating any of the information. You're not actually applying any of the information. You're not forming a connection, hence disconnection. So if you just pull cards and you sit down and you ask some questions and you pull some cards and maybe even talk about it out loud with yourself, but that's it, bada bing, bada boom, and you walk away. Don't get me wrong. I read that way for myself plenty of the time. I'm not saying that I don't, but you bet your ass that I have a tarot integration system for myself. I do not do all of my readings for myself that way. No way. I do my readings for myself that way when that's the time and space I have for myself. Okay. But when I create the time and space for tarot integration, I'm going to set aside more time. I'm going to for me, it's journaling. Could you guess otherwise? For me, I love journaling about it because I reread my journals and I reread my tarot readings. And I actually think that is one of the best ways that I've really come to understand, like truly understand and retain the information and energy of each card, is because I go back and read my tarot readings. It is for so many reasons. Number one, it's really interesting to go back and read what your interpretation of that card was at that time, because depending on what your experience has been recently is going to really influence how you vibe with the energy of that card. Okay. So it's really interesting to kind of step into the head space and the energetic space of a past version of yourself and how you interpreted that card versus how you interpret that now, because chances are you've practiced a little more since then, right? Because you're reading a past reading and you're like, oh, it's so funny. This happens. I love talking about this with other tarot readers, especially those cards where you used to have this really like difficult or tumultuous relationship or just vibe or feeling with this card. And you really healed through working with and embodying the energy of that card. And now you have this like really great relationship with it. And so it's really interesting going back and being like, oh yeah, that was kind of my pre the Wheel of Fortune days. Back then that card used to totally haunt me, et cetera, right? So it really, really helps for just pure straight up shadow work like that. But again, you're reading this past version of yourself and you're reminding yourself of another version of interpretation of this card. And just like we were talking about in my different suggestions for how to integrate, when we absorb as many possible different perspectives of these archetypes from as many different people as possible, it only furthers and helps promote our understanding of it as well. I promise you do not want to get all of your tarot education and understanding from one source. And that goes for any type of archetypal work, whether it's mythology, astrology, right? You really, really want to broaden your horizons and your resources as much as possible, because this is only going to foster and really fortify true understanding for you, where you don't, again, it takes away that element of feeling like you're memorizing anything. You pull up a card and you know what it means because you understand those symbols and the energy that they create with each other. Okay. Let's talk a little bit though about oracle decks, because oracle decks are different in their construction and even their application. I mean, they really are very, very different than tarot cards. But honestly, the way that you use them is really similar in so many ways. The biggest difference with oracle decks is that this is an even broader definition. So a lot of different kinds of decks fall under this huge umbrella term. A tarot deck has these different suits, right? And it has a certain number of cards. There's more structure there. With an oracle deck, this is typically the total brainchild of that specific artist and creator. They determine the number of cards. They determine the imagery of the cards. They determine the meaning of the cards. If there's even suits, and oftentimes there's not, the themes, like for oracle decks, are so wide. Oh my God, there are so many. Search right now, spiritual oracle decks online, and your brain will just go into overdrive because there's so many. There's animal spirits and crystals and mythological creatures and pop culture characters and themes. And there's seriously so many. And the same goes for tarot art themes, but again, there's still this underlying structure of there's this many suits, this many cards per suit, right? Et cetera, this total amount of cards in the deck. With oracle, it could be totally different. And so my biggest tip with oracle decks is you want to read through that booklet, the booklet that it comes with, and it will come with a booklet. That is going to be a little treasure map from the artist and or creator. And they're going to walk you through their journey, why they created the deck, what they were thinking about, what energy they wanted the deck to have. And then they're going to walk you through the meanings and interpretations of each card. In oracle decks, you're going to fall back on that booklet a lot more often than in tarot, because this is the total brainchild of this artist and creator, like I said, okay? In a tarot deck, this is connected to a specific, this is rooted in a specific system. So with oracle decks, you really want to get more into the mind of and the understanding of that artist, okay? And over time, more and more as you use that oracle deck, you might find yourself reaching for that booklet less and less. You might kind of just have that clear cognizance with it, that knowing, right? Again, because you're going to develop that actual understanding. But really similar to tarot cards, you're using the imagery and the interpretation of these card faces in relation to a specific intention, person, or situation for further insight and guidance. Okay. Oracle decks are really wonderful for intention cards because each card themselves usually is an intention. These are wonderful, wonderful decks for daily card pulls or for setting specific intentions and kind of embodying really specific ideas like that. Okay. So I love using my Oracle decks for in ritual work, first of all, and really bringing in and amplifying that specific intention. And I love using it for daily intention work and using it either as a cast an intention for the day in the morning or kind of reflect on the theme for that day that was just spent at the end of the day. Okay, so that's a little bit background around Oracle decks. It really depends on the specific deck. That's why I can only give you such a general overview of them. Okay, so when it comes to tarot, when it comes, I should say, honestly, when it comes to cartomancy, because whether we're using Oracle decks or tarot decks, the name of the game is understanding, not memorizing. And trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, trusting your human psyche and universal understanding of these symbols and these colors and these imagery to really understand the energy and the message behind the card itself. Now, when you start pulling multiple cards together, this is when they start interacting with each other. And that's why you'll find a lot of readers, when they're doing a tarot reading for you, will go through each individual card and interpreting it that way. And then at the end, kind of bringing everyone together for one cohesive spiritual message that's being offered to you. And so I really recommend taking this approach in your individual practice and cartomancy practice as well, and breaking it down piece by piece like that. That's why when we set time aside for integration, we set that time aside. It takes time. Don't rush the process. Don't feel like you have to do this for every reading, right? Like I said, you don't have to do this for every reading, but do set regular time aside for this. Do set time aside to actually journal it out. What were the cards? What was the spread? What were the questions that you asked? How did you feel about all of that? What resonated? What didn't? What did the book say next? Okay. I also want to make mention, kind of starting to round things out here. The types of questions that you ask matter. The way that you phrase your questions matter. So when we're seeking something outside of ourselves, really beyond ourselves, for spiritual insight and guidance, and we're seeking divine truth, be mindful of what you're asking. Do you want the truth? Do you want the answer to that? Because it's totally okay if the answer is no. It's totally okay if you're not ready for that truth. Be mindful of that and be okay with not asking in the first place. A big mistake with tarot that puts people off a lot or gives them the heebie-jeebies or freaks them out is because they're grabbing for their deck. And they are doing it out of fear and anxiety, right? To get answers. And it comes, you think, oh, I'm connecting spiritually. No, really. The truth is that deep down you're reaching for it because you can't sit with the unknown. You're afraid of sitting with and accepting that you don't have all the answers and that you don't know. Right? And that's really where it comes from. Sometimes the best thing to do is to admit, I don't want to know the answer to this right now, or I don't want to ask. I'm okay with not knowing. Not knowing is what's best for me right now. There is a lot of power in that. So I hope that was one of the unexpected tips today. Sometimes the answer is not to pick up the deck. Sometimes the answer is remaining in the unknown. Okay. Know when it's time to read and when it's not. And the biggest indicator is you're forcing it. The reading feels aggressive, the reading feels uncomfortable, and you feel irritable. The shuffling isn't going well. Trust me, when you feel tension emotionally and physically during a reading, you're probably forcing it. And that is a huge indicator that right now is not a time to read. Okay. Now, as far as how to structure questions, tarot can offer you insight and guidance that can definitely influence how and what decisions we make. Okay, that's the truth. And I still tell everyone, every single beginner for years and years and years, I've been saying this. We do not put our decision-making responsibility in the hands of the cards or a person reading for us. Ever, 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 ever. That responsibility is always ours and ours alone. We can get further information and further insight, but ultimately we take responsibility for that. So I really, really discourage you from asking questions like, should I do this? I don't love shoulds in the first place. It puts us in a tough frame of mind. That really promotes a lot of negative thought patterns. So I don't love shoulds in the first place. And I definitely don't recommend asking cards if you should or shouldn't do something. It's ultimately up to you. I also kind of piggybacking off of questions I don't ask. And I believe we're not supposed to know, or we're supposed to. I think it's an extremely, extremely intimate journey. And I think that having this information doesn't always, I think there's certain information that we're not supposed to have. And that we're supposed to find out and learn and experience is what I'm trying to say. And those are major life questions like, when am I going to die, or how am I going to die? Will I ever have fill in the blank? Will I ever have a baby? Will I ever get married? Will I ever meet my soulmate? Will I ever feel fulfilled in my career? Will I ever achieve success? Here's the deal. I am not saying that any kind of divination can't answer those questions. I am sure the answer to those questions are out there. And I'm sure that most humans, most Earth human beings here in this dimension, not ready for the answers. I think the answers are out there, and I don't think most of us are ready for them. And that's why that information is usually not helpful, if not potentially damaging. So that's my personal ethics when it comes to questions that you do and don't ask. And if you offer readings professionally, whether that's astrology, tarot, psychic, mediumship work, anything like that, I really, really encourage you to consider this in your own code of ethics and your own personal and professional boundaries and what you're comfortable with exploring with other people. Because when we're asking big stuff like that, and you willingly answer and kind of partake in that transaction, you just never know what you're potentially opening yourself up for. That person could totally they're already in a place where they're framing their future and their timelines as something that happened to them rather than active drivers in their experience. Okay. And so more often than not, that's exactly where that rabbit hole is going to go. It's going to keep going down. Well, you did this to me. You said this, so I said this, right? And so right off the bat, I don't answer questions like that, okay? And just to keep it really aligned and authentic, I don't even personally ask those questions for myself in my own personal practice as well. That's just, again, my own code of ethics. And my whole purpose in telling you all this is because I really encourage you in all of your spirituality, in all of your spiritual gifts and skills and tools that you utilize, to explore and understand and create your own code of ethics. Okay. It's really important. Boundaries are important. Okay. So I don't ask the shoulds. I don't ask the questions to answers I don't want to explore. And then I really, really strive to ask as open-ended questions as possible. I really try not to ask yes or no questions. And this reason is a little more simple. And the easiest way to say it is that Oracle decks and tarot cards are not really set up for yes and no. That is still a valid question. You can do a lot of divination through yes and no type and style of answers, like polarizing answers or binary answers like that. I really recommend pendulum work much, much, much more for those style of questions. For tarot, it is going to be more effective, in my opinion, if you ask much more open-ended questions. So instead of, will I get this job that I just applied for? I like to ask things like, how can I set myself up for the best success in this new job endeavor? And I really put myself in that driver's seat I'm talking about in my own human experience. And I use tarot to empower me. I use cartomancy to empower me as the driver of my own experience. Does that make sense? I hope that kind of resonates and lights at least a couple of light bulbs. So how you ask questions definitely matters. And then I just wanted to go over some really quick and easy deck basics, like deck maintenance and so forth. So first of all, when it comes to cleansing and charging your decks, you do want to take a really similar approach to any of your magical tools, similar to like crystals or, again, anything. Yes, you want to be cleansing this energy. Definitely, definitely. I personally cleanse my deck at the beginning of every single reading, even if it's just a really, really quick cleanse. Sometimes I just close my eyes and really ground my energy. And then I blow on the deck and I envision my breath being this really, really effective, brilliant, shining light that cleanses out the deck and gets it ready for me. It literally takes 20 seconds. Okay. So yes, I technically cleanse the deck every single time. I used to say that and people were like, I don't want to do it every time. And I get it. I'm the lazy witch too, so that's why I do it the quick and easy way. Okay, you don't you don't even have to light a match or a lighter if you don't want to. But you can also cleanse with smoke. You can use crystals. You can set your deck in a dish of salt. Please refer to our cleansing episode because a lot of cleansing methods in there can very easily be applied to tarot decks. Okay. And then charging your deck. So honestly, I love asking other tarot readers about this because there are so many unique ways to bond with and charge your deck. And to me, charging your deck is just another way of bonding and connecting with it, because really that's what amplifies the power of your deck, is your unique connection and bond to it. Because you're the one reading. The cards don't pick themselves up and do anything. You're the user, right? You bring the magic, my love. And so you can charge it under a certain moon, under certain crystals, hold it in your hands and think a certain intention or affirmation and really charge it with that. You are more than welcome to do any of those things. I personally find that the best way to charge a deck is to use it frequently. That for me, in my experience, my decks being used is what makes them the most happy and where I get those just like mic drop readings, the more often I use them. So that's how I charge them. I just give lots of readings. I start pulling a card more frequently throughout the day, or I start seeking out specific cards to use in ritual or for intentions. Like I'll look for a specific card like the star. That's an easy go-to. And I'll put it on my kitchen altar for the day. Or I'll put that under the moon next to a jar of moon water and really specifically charge the moon water under the moon and with the energy of that card. So all of these ways, anytime you just use your deck, in my opinion, charges it and furthers your connection and your bond to it. But you can also do things like you can anoint it with your favorite oil. Just use a very, 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 very small amount. So you don't ruin the deck by any means. But you can anoint the edges. You can, I heard from Ashley at Starseed Shadows. I saw on her Instagram, one of her tips was to sleep with her deck, or sleep with your deck. I love that. You could sleep with it under your pillow. You on your nightstand. I have like a little windowsill above my bed. I really like that idea a lot. I thought that was cute. Honestly, just carrying it around with you. So I've done that. I've just brought it with me, just everywhere. Whether I use it or not, I just bring it with me like a friend. So there's lots and lots of ways, but you can also just choose a crystal, program that crystal with your intention, and set it right on top of the deck. So the options are really endless there. Really go with your intuition, but kind of personify the deck and think about it as something you're fostering a connection with. How can you kind of empathize and understand, okay, how, if I was, wanting to be connected with, how would I want that connection to be fostered with me? Okay. And so that's how you do it. So do cleanse, do charge and bond with your decks, and do take breaks, like I've mentioned a couple of times now. A deck will let you know when it needs a break and it needs a rest. I have decks that go into a full-blown hibernation period, and it's usually just a clear cognizance. It's a knowing, or sometimes it's readings that just feel off. Again, it's not that the cards are wrong, but something is feeling off, and I realize, oh, my deck is feeling off. It's time for a break. Because I've fostered a strong connection with my deck, when it is feeling off and ready for that, I can sense and feel that as well. And so I put it back in its box. I usually give it a nice, good, thorough cleansing and gratitude and thank it. And I put it in its box and I put it away. But my active, as I call them, my active decks that I'm using right now, I have 3 active decks. One is for clients. One is for personal, intuitive, introspective shadow work. And then the other one I use for business and public use in my email, stuff like that. And so for any active decks, I keep them out of the box and on an altar or sacred surface. Not everybody does this. A lot of people keep their cards in a tarot bag or in the box on a shelf by their altar. Any of that is totally fine. I just wanted to share that. I love this idea of the deck, like being out and active and absorbing all of the energy from my altar and my guides and my ancestors. And I don't know. I've been doing that for a little over 3 years now. If it's an active deck, I have it out of the box, out of the bag, on a sacred surface. More often than not with a very specific crystal sitting on top of it. So, and then, like I mentioned, you can have decks for specific intentions. So I have, like I said, the client deck, I have a personal deck, and I have a more public deck that's for like collective readings. Okay. You can do the same thing. You can also have a deck that you use under specific moon phases to work with certain deities, to work with and connect with a certain planet. You can dedicate a deck to a specific use, and it's another form of charging it and bonding with it, actually. Okay. So that's another really creative way to use your deck. But overall, what you use it for, the insight you use it for, that is for you and your intuition. You will see it calling to you. First of all, your deck will call to you. You'll be feeling lost or blocked or confused and seeking something, and you'll see it sitting there, and you'll get that grab me. And that's one way. But you can also create that habit by really using it as an introspective companion, using it as a companion to your journaling, using it as a companion to your astrological study. That's something we'll continue to explore more on the show here, okay? But you're really utilizing it, like I said, for further insight and guidance on any intention, person, or situation in your life. So where and how you use it, that's where you get magical and creative, my love. I would love to hear from all of you what questions have come up for you. Did this inspire you? Are you going to go get your first deck, or maybe you're going to clean the dust off of yours after you haven't grabbed it in a while? Was there any tip that really stood out to you that you really liked? Or even better yet, I would really love to hear from you, your creative tarot, oracle deck, and cartomancy tips that we can share with everybody here in the neighborhood. Let's help each other grow. If you're in that witch school, you have access to my quick cartomancy class, where basically it's a really thorough breakdown and reference booklet of this entire episode if you need. That is available for you in your student portal. If you're not in that witch school and you want to be, you can get to the show notes right now and join us. We would absolutely love to have you. This was amazing. I cannot wait for your tarot journey and all of the magic and insight and messages that you're going to be receiving, and really bonding with your spirit guides and your intuition. It's really such a fulfilling practice. So please, I hope that you have a beautiful day, a beautiful rest of your week. Can't wait to see you on Friday for our next planetary episode. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful time. Don't forget to stay safe, have fun, and stay magical out there. Hey, you magical human. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of That Witch Podcast. If you want to support the show, the best way to do that is to share with a friend or give a shout out on your social media. You can also leave a 5-star rating and review on both Apple and Spotify. And if you can't get enough of all of our witchy magical content here in the neighborhood, you definitely want to make sure you're subscribed to my email newsletter, That Witch Gazette. It's a really fun, really convenient one-stop shop to stay up to date on all of the news and happenings here in our neighborhood. If you have any questions, suggestions, ideas for the show, or if you'd like to sponsor an episode, you can send me a message at thatwitchnextdoor.com/conjurethatwitch. Thank you so much. I'll see y'all next time.